Good afternoon. My name is Steve Gragert, and I have the pleasure and privilege to serve as director of the Will Rogers Memorial Museum in Claremore and the Will Rogers Birthplace Ranch, OLLI. In fact, I have the best job possible. You can't help but have fun with Will. I apologize for not being able to be with you today at Spanish Cove, to visit personally with each of you, and to introduce firsthand my course for this fall's OLLI at OSU series, Will Rogers, an American Original. I suspect that if I was with you today and asked everyone to raise a hand if they knew of Will Rogers, I would see arms go up throughout the room, perhaps everyone's. Such a response is fairly typical, especially here in Oklahoma. Generally, however, many people know of Will Rogers, but they don't really know him. Through this course, Will Rogers, an American Original, I hope to make the picture of the man more complete in your minds, to help you understand the forces that shaped his life, to appreciate the breadth of his multifaceted career, to realize the impact and influence he had on others, and to comprehend his continuing, enduring legacy now some 78 years after his death. As you can see from the course outline, we will explore his family and heritage, his formative years, and his early moments in show business. We'll look at his career and success as an entertainer and a communicator. We'll study his reach as a humanitarian and how he used humor to address the needs of others. And finally, we will look closely at his lasting impact and legacy. Will was quite simply what many of us want to be: generous, smart, incisive, witty, and extremely influential. As perfectly suited as his message was for the 1920s and 1930s, it continues to ring with truth and relevance today. A visit to the Will Rogers Memorial Museum or to its website, willrogers.com, or a read through any one of several collections of his quotes confirms the timelessness and universality of his words. His writings, movies, radio programs, plus a marvelous collection of photographs and memorabilia at the memorial provide a priceless reservoir of his philosophy, insight, and humor. Beyond his humor, indeed very much expressed through his humor, Will Rogers was a man of humanness and humanity. He was a man who never left behind his beginnings, his roots in Oklahoma, his heritage as Cherokee. He was proud of both, and he proclaimed both. His public writings, his public speaking, even his films and radio broadcast are full of references to his home state and to his Cherokee blood. Even though he and his family lived in California, he would often mention that his hometown was Claremore, Oklahoma. In fact, his first sound film was set in Claremore, and the boat he commanded in his final movie, Steamboat Round the Bend, carried the name Claremore Queen. We'll learn that his bold, proud reminders to his audiences that he was Native American and Indian came in a day when to mention you were anything less than pure white could bring scorn and ostracism. He proudly proclaimed his Indian heritage in his writings, on radio, in his films, and from the stage. Often he elevated with humor the common sense of his Indian heritage. His humanitarianism, as much as any other aspect of his life and legacy, justifies the title Oklahoma's Gift to America. Perhaps the most explicit representation of that humanitarianism could be found in his response to the effects of the Depression in the United States in the 1930s. The crushing phenomenon of the Great Depression, however, did not make Rogers a humanitarian, no more than it solidified his worth as a humorist. He had long before established both reputations. Throughout his career, he appeared at numerous benefits in New York and other cities for a vast array of causes. Today, the Will Rogers Memorial Museum, which you will have a chance to visit November the 15th, houses the world's most extensive collection of archives, artifacts, and artwork devoted to Will Rogers. At more than 30,000 square feet, it is considered one of the largest museums in the country, dedicated to one person who is neither a political office holder nor a military figure. What manner of person inspires this kind of attention, recognition, and devotion 78 years after his death? What was so special about Will Rogers? In words that greet visitors as they enter the Memorial Museum, as they will greet you, come November the 15th. Writer Damon Runyon perhaps summed it up best when he called Will Rogers America's most accomplished human document, one-third humor, one-third humanitarian, one-third heart. When news of Rogers' death reached the east coast of the United States in August 1935, Joe Robinson, the majority leader of the United States Senate and a close friend, rose on the floor of the Senate and eulogized Rogers as the country's, quote, most widely known private citizen and certainly the best beloved. The NBC and CBS radio networks went off the air for 30 minutes as a tribute during his funeral. In its first issue after Will's death, the New York Times devoted cumulatively more than 13 pages of editorial copy in covering the accident, recapping Rogers' life and career, and eulogizing the departed Oklahoman. The reaction to this one man's death was unprecedented and perhaps has never been duplicated. As one of his biographers, Ben Yagoda, noted, the message he communicated was perfectly suited for the times. In the 1920s, American society transformed itself into something unfamiliar, and for many people, a little frightening. In the 1930s, the bottom fell out of the economy. Rogers was an astute and shrewd observer of politics and other foibles, a purveyor of great good humor, a decent man who knew how to communicate decency masterfully. But what was probably more important during this period of national anxiety was the way his wry, genial, supremely self-effacing, pointed yet never overheated wit and commentary implicitly asserted that maybe things hadn't changed so much after all. He allowed his listeners to continue to think that common sense and two-syllable words could get to the heart of any problem. This is the man we will come together to study, to discuss, and to hear during the OLLI at Spanish Cove course beginning Wednesday, October the 2nd. Come and join me to learn about the remarkable Will Rogers, and to smile, chuckle, and nod our heads in unison as we hear his words of wisdom and wit. Thank you.